Before we dive into this week's Halloween news, I have a message from the channel's sponsor, Hunt a Killer, and their brand new Blair Witch game. Now that Halloween is past and the days are getting shorter and the air is getting even colder, the idea of going outside and doing something fun with your friends is even scarier than it was before. So if you're looking for an awesome spooky way to spend a night in, I cannot recommend this Blair Witch experience enough. If you guys haven't caught my Halloween franchise ranking yet, they did sponsor that video as well, and since then I've actually played the game and it is a ton of fun. It fits right into the Blair Witch universe, and it follows a lady named Rosemary Kent who's looking for her son, who of course disappeared in the Black Hills forest. I also think it's worth pointing out that this is not something you're going to blow through in an hour. I had two of my friends with me and it still took us pretty much all night while we were sitting at a bar trying to piece this story together. So I'm assuming that if you do it by yourself, you'll spend pretty much your whole afternoon or a whole night trying to figure this mystery out. And as a self-proclaimed Blair Witch expert, it was awesome to see all of the different Easter eggs for the Blair Witch Project, Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, and Blair Witch 2016 hidden everywhere on the included materials. Now that my channel has grown, I get a ton of sponsorship opportunities, and I turn the vast majority of them down because they don't really fit in with my videos. But I love Blair Witch and I was excited to try this out, and now that I've completed it, I think you guys are really gonna like it too. So head to my link, which is huntakiller.com/Jimmy, and use the special promo code Jimmy and you'll get 20% off your first box. Okay, so as weird as it seems to be back at square one with this movie again for what I think is the third time, the silver lining here is that we get a whole nother year of Halloween Kills updates, and then of course a whole year of Halloween Ends updates. And since we got some new footage back on Halloween, and I am going to acknowledge the fact that we've gotten 2 trailers but no poster for this movie that's coming out in less than a year now, which is pretty odd, there have been some people working on the movie who have done interviews and they've let some pretty cool details slip. But before we jump into that, I want to respond directly and give you an update on a comment that appeared a lot on my Halloween Kills teaser breakdown. Because of the fact that the trailer was released in 1080p and the audio laid over the shot of Michael picking up the mask says next Halloween, a lot of people are convinced that that was just made for the trailer since Halloween Kills takes place on the same night as Halloween 2018. That comment in particular stood out to me not only because a lot of people left it, but also because if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. So I did some digging and I'm just going to tell you right now that I am 99.9% certain that that was not just stuff shot or recorded for the trailer. That's stuff from the actual movie. The reason I'm so positive about this is because I know a few people who actually do have the Halloween Kills script, and I was talking to them about the trailer and I asked how it lined up with what they've read in the script. Trust me, I haven't read it yet. I don't want to know any real spoilers, but all they let me know is that a lot of people they noticed were saying that yes, that audio and that footage seems like it was filmed for the trailer, but they knew for a fact that it's actually in the movie, both the audio and that footage. On top of that, while we do know that Halloween Kills and Halloween 2018 take place on the same night, we have no clue if Halloween Ends takes place on the same night as those other 2 movies. We know that Michael Myers is supernatural to a degree at this point in this universe, so for all we know, Halloween Kills could end and the movie could skip forward a full year to the next Halloween. I just saw so many people talking about this that I wanted to go out and find a definitive answer if I could, so I hope that cleared it up for you. Oh, and if you're one of those people who went to the test screening or you somehow have a script of your own, do not talk about where that shows up in the movie. Don't spoil anything in the comments. That will get you a hard and fast permanent ban. The next and more exciting thing in my opinion that I want to talk about is an interview that Patrick Cavanaugh had with a producer of Halloween Kills named Ryan Freeman over at comicbook.com. With 2 sequels to Halloween 2018 coming and one of them definitively titled Halloween Ends, Cavanaugh decided to ask what's going to happen with the franchise after that movie comes out. Of course, at first we got that classic rehearsed studio talk where they say we don't know anything about the future of the franchise beyond this 3rd movie and we haven't talked about it at all, despite the fact that millions, potentially hundreds of $1 million are on the line. Yeah, nah, we're only looking forward to that next movie and we're just stopping there. Totally. But like any great interviewer, Cavanaugh worked him a bit, and we did get something pretty interesting just after that. Freeman said the story had these little offshoots. They had done Halloween 3 way back then, so it's like we're living in the moment with these films that are successful, and we'll see where it goes from there. If you want to read the rest of the interview, and I highly recommend you check it out, it's linked in the description, but it really did stand out to me that right after being asked about a movie after Halloween Ends, the first thing that came to mind for Freeman was Halloween 3. For the 1 or 2 of you out there who don't know this, the original plan after Halloween 2 was to make Halloween as a franchise sort of an anthology. So every year you could go to the movie theater around October and see a brand new Halloween movie that didn't have Michael Myers, was completely unconnected to the one that came before it, but just focused on the actual holiday of Halloween. Of course, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch came out and everyone wrongly decided it was a bad movie and it didn't make as much money as Halloween 1 or 2, so they went back to the drawing board and brought out Halloween 4 10 years later. Over the years though, thanks to stuff like an excellent Scream Factory release and The Guest having awesome Easter eggs to Halloween 3, more people have went back and checked it out and realized how wrong they were the first time they saw it, and that while it's weird to not have Michael Myers in a Halloween movie, as a standalone horror film, it is awesome. And the other good thing about Halloween 3 is that the group of people up top who don't want to think about, let alone speak about Halloween 3 is quickly shrinking since that movie came out decades ago at this point. So other newer producers like Freeman can come into the franchise and resurface these awesome ideas that didn't go anywhere immediately when they happened back then. I mean, look, Halloween Ends is called Halloween Ends for a reason. Whether we like it or not, the third movie in David Gordon Green's trilogy is going to wrap up the Michael Myers and Laurie Strode story with one or both of them dying, and then we're going to be in the exact same spot we were back in 1981 before I was born with Halloween 2. I shouldn't have to say this, but I think it's a pretty defendable fact that I am one of the biggest Michael Myers fans on earth, but after this trilogy wraps up, I think that character should have a little bit of a break so that they can go back to the drawing board, figure out what to do next with Michael Myers, and bring him back in a way that keeps him scary like he is in Halloween 2018, and hopefully will be in Kills and Ends. And in the meantime, I don't see anything wrong with Blumhouse and Universal teaming up to bring out a new Halloween themed movie every year with a similar budget, or maybe a new director coming on board to really keep the holiday spirit going, because as this year showed, COVID can't take away Halloween, so having a brand new movie set around the best time of year every year for a few years at least would be awesome. I've probably said this a million times at this point, but the biggest reason that Halloween 2018 hit so hard when it came out is because it had been pretty much a decade since we had seen Michael Myers on the big screen. So knowing that they were getting these awesome creators on board, having a huge production company like Blumhouse who was making pretty much the coolest stuff out there at the time, and then having Jamie Lee Curtis and John Carpenter coming back, that's what made it really exciting for fans. The nostalgia and the hype had been building for the better part of a decade, so when we heard all of this good stuff about the movie for once after Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which was pretty much a disaster, it was awesome. It was just such a cool time to be a Halloween fan. And with that story ending in 2022, I think the smartest move for everyone involved here, Trancast, Universal, Blumhouse, Miramax, is to just keep the Halloween name in the public consciousness by putting out Halloween themed movies, but let Michael Myers rest a bit so that the diehard fans like us can sort of miss him, and then they can bring him back when the general audience has also forgotten about him and started to miss him, and really just hammer home another awesome reboot slash sequel. There are also a ton of slashers coming out in the next few years, like Scream 5, the Texas Chainsaw reboot, Candyman. I'm sure Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th are not far behind, so keeping Halloween in the public consciousness without really competing with all these other big movies that are coming down the pipe just seems like an incredibly smart move for Blumhouse and Universal. The holiday of Halloween and the horror genre are so tied together intrinsically at this point that I feel like it's a no-brainer, pretty much leaving money on the table to not have a sandbox that new creators and old creators can come play in every year. They could come up with any original story they want as long as it's set on Halloween. That's just such an exciting idea to me. And I really think Blumhouse is perfect for it because they've done such a good job bringing old horror directors back like M. Night Shyamalan, but also introducing new ones like David Gordon Green and Jordan Peele and Christopher Landon, who did Happy Death Day and now Freaky. They're really good at finding these awesome horror directors. And the coolest thing is, if one of these anthology movies takes off, it could become its own franchise, and then we'd have even more Halloween movies to look forward to. If Halloween Ends does manage to stick the landing, I honestly don't really know where they would go from there. Obviously, they could go with a full-on reboot, and there always is the option that they could do another X years later sequel that reincorporates Halloween 2 and Halloween 4 into the timeline. But as cool as that sounds to me, I know for a fact it would be extremely hard to get off the ground because you've got to get a distributor like Universal excited to fund this movie, and hearing that they have to kind of convince people that another new timeline is going to make sense to them, it just seems like something so confusing that they wouldn't even want to try. And of course, I know this is looking super far into the future at this point, but Halloween is my favorite franchise, and the idea of it going away for another decade after Halloween Ends, that's super disappointing to me. I want there to be a way for it to stick around so that we always have something cool and fun to talk about every October when the best time of year rolls around. And to follow up my mention of a TV show, back when Halloween 2018 came out, Malek Akkad did a bunch of weird interviews where he said he wanted to turn Halloween into a TV series before we even knew there was going to be a sequel to 2018. And that just always stood out to me as a weird thing to say. Like, you just had so much success with Halloween 2018 in theaters, and you're like, yep, we're probably going to do a TV series down the line. But now that we have stuff like HBO Max, where David Gordon Green is reportedly doing a Hellraiser series, it's not that hard to think about him eventually having a tie-in series of some sort to his Halloween movies. I think that would be really cool. Obviously, it's a lot easier with people like James Gunn, who are doing a companion series to the Suicide Squad, or Matt Reeves, who's doing a companion series to his Batman movie, because that's all Warner Brothers. But still, if you got David Gordon Green working on a show at HBO Max for one horror franchise, you might want to get him working on another, you know what I mean? All I'm saying is, with how absolutely gutted the theatrical industry is at this point thanks to COVID, I know that a lot of these studios are looking at streaming with a whole new light, just thinking about all the possibilities they have to get this stuff right in front of people's faces. And with how big the Halloween franchise is as a whole, especially right now, I don't think we're going to be waiting long before something related to it pops up on a streaming service of some sort. One of the biggest benefits this franchise has as a whole right now is that it's pretty much 2 steps ahead of all of its competition. So if they're smart and they keep the momentum they have with these movies going forward after Halloween Ends comes out, they'll be able to stay 2 steps ahead of their other competition like Friday the 13th or A Nightmare on Elm Street if any of those movies try to come in and pull the rug out from under them. There's also a children's book adaptation of the first movie coming out, and apparently a video game's being worked on, so while the film franchise might wrap up for a bit in 2022, I feel like there's more than enough stuff coming down the pipeline to keep us Halloween fans excited. But now I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. What do you think is going to happen after Halloween Ends, and how do you feel about the trailer a few weeks later? Is the hype died down and you don't like it as much, or do you still think it's just as cool now as you did when it came out? Anyway guys, my name is Jimmy Champane, and I'll see you in the next one. Shape on.